Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls of all ages, welcome to another exciting episode of the Black Tower Podcast, a Wheel of Time podcast. I am Daniel.
I am Josh.
And I am Andrew.
And we're
and I've
here.
got a spoiler warning for you.
Indeed. What you got?
Listen here, all you lovely, lovely listeners. If you have not read the entire Wheel of Time series, you are at risk of being spoiled. You have been warned.
That was amazing. I can't. I'm dead.
I'm terrified
I'm
to listen
dead,
back to
guys.
it.
I'm literally dead.
That was so good.
That was really good.
Loved it. Love it.
So as you
Ladies
can
and
see,
gentlemen, that's why autotune is so popular
Very
in the
good.
industry.
we got some fun stuff.
That's true.
All of us, we downloaded some voice mods. Now, unfortunately, Josh and I can't use them this episode because we'd have to restart our computers, and we don't want to do that.
And we don't wanna.
Also, that would take
you
us
can't
away
make us.
from being able to do the podcast in a timely manner so that it could get to you, the listeners, in a timely manner. So,
That's right. I do have to edit it
Because
tonight,
we
don't I?
love you.
however,
Something
Andrew
like that.
is dope, and so he already had it. And so I think we might just always do our spoiler warning in fun places, like cathedrals or auto-tune, basically T-Pain's house.
Hey,
Yeah, you know.
Jigsaw. You can turn yourself into a
Ooh.
female voice.
Gross. Not the female voice, the Jigsaw. Let me be very clear.
God damn.
Don't even try and backtrack.
Hey,
Don't even try and backtrack.
I thought you weren't my friend.
You can turn your voice into a woman. Ew, gross.
We are. That's why we're being painfully honest with you.
Why would you throw me under the bus?
That's why we're being so honest.
But bus, why would you throw
well,
me
you'll have
under
to be
bus?
mad. It's only taint.
Oh,
Embrace the
I
taint.
got so much taint on me.
That is where we're at. It's so much taint. Do you know what? I'm going to say this right now. I'm just going to lay it out there. I think it sucks that it was the men that Robert Jordan wrote this series so well that it was the men who were arrogant enough to be like, bro, we're going to go attack the Dark One. And like, I can just see the meeting, right? The Aes Sedai all gather under one roof, and Lews Therin gets up. He's like, guys, Lady Mirren Sedai and I have been studying, and we can do this. We can attack and kill the Dark One directly. Like, all we have to do is drill a hole in the Dark One's prison and then kill him. And then everybody's like, oh, murmur. And then all the women, every single woman in like the Aes Sedai organization was like, bro, how stupid are you? No, we're not doing that. And then like 100 dudes stand up and be like, bro, that's an idea. We could do this.
Hey, ladies, if you're not going to help, hold our beers.
And then the women are like, wool-brained, absolute idiots. Don't
Wait,
do
I'm
this.
sorry,
This is
was
stupid. And they're like, no, we got
Aes
this. We're
Sedai
going to
in
do
the Age
this.
of Legends men?
I mean, maybe.
It's canon now. Literally,
Like,
men was every Aes
go with-
Sedai.
I'm going to throw that a maybe.
But anyway,
Love it.
this
No, but for real, like, because that's one of the things that I love about the opening of the series is they're always talking about the difference between men and women, and it's just a lot of fun. I think it's fun. I think it's enjoyable, and it kind of is a nice little segue into tonight's episode, which
Speaking
is
of, tonight's episode is going to center all around the city of Tar Valon, or the Vagina Island, as one may call it.
vagina.
We're going to be spending a lot of time, or at least the lion's share of the time, talking about the Aes Sedai, as they are a huge focal point at the White Tower, the clit of the vagina island that is the White Tower.
You know how long this
however-
I got a trip to Vagina Island?
I thought the clit.
I
thought
probably, given that you brought it up, probably a long time.
It's been many a moon.
Were you able to find the tower? That's the important
I mean,
thing.
The tower's a lie. It doesn't exist.
see, and this is why it's the men who went and attacked the Dark One.
Oh boy.
Y'all, I'm sick of these-
Alright. Case in point, we've come full circle. Ladies and gentlemen, this is why you are
Ladies
here.
and gentlemen, this has been the Black Tower
Hashtag-
podcast.
I'm sick of our wives lying to us about this magic spot.
Hashtag
I guess the magic spot they're talking about is this this weird other power source they've been telling us about. It makes all kinds of things happen. We're gonna reach out and touch it with the power real quick.
hashtag
See what happens.
bad Aes Sedai and
Right. But as I said, we are going to have a some focus on the Aes Sedai and their organization, though we will get into a little bit of everything as far as the island itself and all of the that they're in stuff. I can't use language.
We're gonna tell you so much about Tar Valon you'll never want to hear.
hopefully.
Hopefully.
The thing is, and I actually made this mistake in the pre-show when we're jumping in there and we're like, oh yeah, this is what we're gonna do tonight. I was like, hey, I think we should talk about the Aes Sedai and the White Tower. And then Daniel and Andrew had to like very quickly be like, bro, we said Tar Valon, not the White Tower, because there are a lot of other things in Tar Valon that are not specific to the tower. And so keep in mind, we're going to be discussing a lot of those things
Correct.
as well.
You had the inverse problem that most stereotypical males have. Generally, we can find the island, but not the tower. But you can only find the tower and not the island somehow.
And yet he has
Years of academy training wasted.
and yet he has 2 kids. Which means that presumably he's found the rest of the island.
Hey, man, do rivers run south? Yes, they do.
At least twice. At least
Minimum.
I
twice.
don't know. According to
Twice.
fifth grade
Oh,
health class,
shit.
you just have to get it in the general vicinity and they're pregnant. So
Oh, that's American scare
Right,
tactics, and
right,
you know
right.
it.
Oh. So, fun times at Richmond High, at Black Tower High.
Giggity.
So, Tar Valon, as Andrew has so eloquently illustrated, is an island. It is a whole ass island. It's almost like the Vatican being in Italy, only smaller. Right? The Vatican is like one very small portion. So like the White Tower and the Tower grounds are a small portion of Tar Valon. Right? Someone back me up here.
Right.
Nobody? Nobody's
I
gonna back
said
me up?
right, motherfucker.
I'm gonna go solo on this bitch. All right, fine.
God damn it.
Anyway, to get into Tar Valon, one of the coolest things about Tar Valon is to get into it, you have to go over a bridge, which makes it very, very difficult.
To go over one
Or
of
you have to
6
go
bridges.
by ship, which makes it very, very right. Which makes it very difficult for invaders, which is why Arthur Hawkwing had such a difficult time getting into. You know what I'm saying? He couldn't get it. He couldn't seal the deal.
Oh yeah, it's a super.
nothing?
Yeah. I got you.
All right, that's cool.
So I'm gonna do something a little different. And normally, after we talk about things, we talk about the parallels
All right.
outside of the island or whatever topic. And I want to talk about the parallels to start with because we have so much in series content to cover. So, does that sound good to y'all?
Yeah, go for it.
Okay, I was making sure. I was like, did everything just break?
Yeah, I think we're having some kind of connection
Yeah.
issue. You can.
I
cut
know
this
there's a
part out.
little-
I think
little
we're
bit
having
of
some kind of
latency.
connection issue because you guys have blipped in and out. But I heard you say that you wanted to go over the geography,
Oh, the parallels to
the
like
stats of the,
the
area.
parallels to like real world or to real
Yeah,
world
yeah,
like
yeah.
mythology and stuff.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
Tar Valon is very similar to the Avalon that we find in Arthurian legend. Big surprise there. Yet another aspect of the Wheel of Time that can probably is very well influenced by Arthurian legend. Avalon in Arthurian legend is the place where Excalibur, which of course is another parallel to Kalendor, was forged. Avalon was the home of Morgan Le Fay, the legendary enchantress, and her 9 sisters. It too was on an island. The inhabitants of Avalon had very long lives, and Avalon is where King Arthur went to die. Kind of parallel to Arthur Hawkwing dying while his armies were sieging Tar Valon. And it's also Avalon was strongly linked with the legend of the rebirth and return of King Arthur, just like Tar Valon is very closely associated with the rebirth and return of the dragon. According to Geoffrey of Monmouth, Avalon is the place where King Arthur was taken after fighting Mordred at the Battle of Camlan to recover from his wounds, and it may be a reference to Rand's future death and his body being taken to Tar Valon. It's also strongly paralleled with the Vatican City, and additionally bears a physical resemblance to Manhattan, given the shape of the island, its location in the middle of a river, and a park at its center, much like the grounds of the White Tower. Finally, of course, its center, known as the White Tower, is a lot like the Minas Tirith in Tolkien's Lord of the Rings. Both cities are described as the largest and finest in the world, though previously this had not been the case in Lord of the Rings, since Osgiliath was, well, I know I butchered that, but was originally the capital of Gondor before it was destroyed. Should also be noted that Minas Tirith did not originally contain a tower, but was built by the stewards. In the Wheel of Time, some said Manetheren was finer than Tar Valon. So that's some parallels to a little bit of real world, but mostly like other fantasy that we know and love.
But no, Tar Valon, I mean, it's almost got legendary status for the Emmons Fielders in the beginning of the story. I mean, you know, they hear about Tar Valon, and it's almost got this, you know, just kind of like you said, it's almost got a mythology all its own for people that have never been there to it. Been there to it, yes.
They done been there.
That's what I meant to say. Ha. But done been there, done that thing. Oh my there. But it's really cool to kind of see how much distrust there is in the rest of the world for even things like a Tar Valon gold mark. There are numerous times where Matt will have a gold mark or a silver mark or something like that, and I'm sorry, not Matt. Perrin, when they're in the studying and they first meet the White Cloaks in book 1, I think it is, and he's carrying the silver mark that Moraine had given him, and the White Cloaks take it and they're like, "Oh yeah, we're automatically suspicious of you because you're carrying a Tar Valon mark." And he's like, "Okay, whatever." And it's like, it's a city. It's a whole ass city that the Aes Sedai happen to reside in. And that's why I say it's similar to Rome and the Vatican, because just because the Vatican is in Rome does not mean the Rome is Vatican. Vatican.
Yeah.
There's obviously a lot of influence, and there's obviously a lot of, bleeding idealism that's bleeding over into the surrounding areas. But, when you get Perrin is not associated with or aligned with the White Tower simply because he has a silver mark from Tar Valon.
I mean, there's also the notable difference too.
But the White Cloaks,
the Pope
of course,
doesn't rule. He doesn't rule over Rome. He doesn't rule over Italy. But in Tar Valon, the Amberlin seat rules the entire city.
Not directly, anyway. Right. And yes, you're absolutely correct. That is one thing, and that is actually one thing about the story that I kind of lose is, I'm in my reread. I'm in, book 4 at this point in time. Swan Sanche is the Amberlin seat, and they spend a lot of time talking about her political maneuvering within the tower. They don't give her a lot of attention when it comes to running the city around the grounds of the White Tower. They mention it in one scene up until this point, and that is, they have petitioners from the world who are coming to petition the Amarillan seat for different reasons, and it's Min who comes in through that sort of way and says, "Oh, I need to speak to
and
the
see, for
Amarillan."
me, like, it was easy for me to forget
So,
that
but
the Amarillan actually only ruled a very small island. The island's only 8 miles long and 2 miles across at its widest point. But because of the vast expanse and distances that the Aes Sedai go through, it's very easy to lose it. It's such a small area that the Amarillan is actually responsible for leading and ruling. Because they have worldwide influence, it makes you almost feel like
right.
they're ruling a kingdom the size of Andor. And they're really not, which I think is a really cool. I don't know if Robert Jordan did that intentionally. I'd like to think he did. And that makes it even cooler that they can make someone who's only ruling such a small
Yeah, I
area
think-
seem like they're ruling
Yeah.
half the world. I mean, they definitely think they rule half the world.
Well, I mean, it's kind of one of those. There's a really interesting dichotomy here, because on one hand you have, the idea that might makes right, and these women are, powerful. They just are. I mean, nobody can go against an Aes Sedai. I mean, yes, you can overwhelm them. You can have, with enough people, I'm sure you could take out an Aes Sedai, but I mean, it's a difficult thing to do, right? And so as the Amarillan, who is, recognized as the highest or strongest or most revered of the sisters, that makes it for an interesting situation. Then you go into the Borderlands, and the Borderlands, they have tremendous respect for Aes Sedai. Whereas, other people, like in the Two Rivers, they have tremendous suspicion of Aes Sedai. But everywhere they go, the authority of Aes Sedai is recognized. Even in Tyr, when Matt is playing cards with the Lordlings, they have the different suits of cards. The king of the cards is recognized as, or the ace or the highest card is recognized as the ruler of each nation. And even in Tyr, where they really, really do not like Aes Sedai, the Amarillan seat is one of the leads on the suits. It's the suit of fire or something like that. But it was the Flame of Tar Valon that was the suit, and they had Swan Sanche as the face on that card. So, I mean, there was, I really like where you're going with that, how they rule such a small geographic area, but they have such a large influence. Does it say in the books how large the geography is?
I don't remember.
Do you know?
I'm pretty sure the books do describe it, because I would think they would.
Well, that's one of the few things about the book series that people are able to pick apart like big time, which is the geography. They don't ever give a real good, Robert Jordan never says, yes, the breadth of the continent is 12,000 leagues. And, so they never get a really good idea. But we do know that from the tower, because it talks in pretty great detail about Matt, wandering around the island after he'd been healed. But he's not able to get over any of the bridges, and he's not able to get passage in either of the docks, which makes me feel like, in a couple of days' time, he's able to wander pretty much all over, which, gives me the impression that it's like a few square miles.
Yeah.
Or, a few dozen,
the
maybe
thing
a dozen
about
square
the island
miles.
of Tar Valon is so much of it is narrow.
Which would be,
So it might be 8 miles long, but
Yeah.
its widest point, which is almost twice as wide as the majority of the island, the narrow part of the island, is only a mile wide, 2 miles wide. So that means the majority of the island, I guess what you would look at is from the north side of the Tar Valon grounds all the way to the North Harbor is only going to be anywhere from a mile and a half to a mile wide. And then
Right.
when you get back down to like south of the tower, south of the
So,
tower
I
grounds
mean-
is going to be where you hit that 2 mile wide stretch, and then the very south, whenever you're, right around South Harbor, is only going to be about a mile and a half, about across.
Right. I'm going to say it's about the size of Guam, maybe a little smaller than Guam. And if any of you have ever been to Guam, which I highly recommend, actually, Guam is actually a really fun place to go. But you can, if you have a vehicle, you can drive around the island in literally like 25 minutes. And the only reason it's 25 minutes is because the speed limit on the entire island is like 40 miles an hour. There's one specific area that is really of value or of worth to go see. But Guam is, I'm gonna say, just for my own, sort of mental placeholder, I'm gonna say Tar Valon is about the size of Guam. Is, for my mind, about the size of Guam, maybe a little smaller. And it's interesting how it is such a small place, but they carry such influence and power across the entire world. And even in places
man,
where they're
Dynamite
hated,
comes in small packages.
you're not wrong. But even in places where they're hated or they're very, very distrusted, their power and authority is still very much recognized.
Correct.
Oh yeah, and it's notably one of the only remaining places, they have the only remaining Ogier Grove within a major city. That is, especially one that is still maintained and kept. So, as pompous as the Aes Sedai can be, at least they maintain the Ogier Grove. But
true.
that could also be political planning, so the Ogier are more likely to come and repair shit, so that nobody knows that the Trollocs breached the walls of Tar Valon and actually destroyed part of the White Tower. Just saying.
Well, I mean, yes.
Hidden 13th
Precisely.
Depository and the Great Library.
The 13th suppository?
Depository, but
You
need
did
right,
actually
right.
say
Definitely go for it.
depository. Just, I don't know why you heard something different.
You
but
actually
he
had me
did say
second
the right
guessing
thing.
myself. I was like, did I fuck up again?
No, you actually did it right, Andrew.
All right.
You're all good.
You're welcome.
Homie with the face over here got weird.
Just doing my best to bring a little madness.
But like,
I mean,
the cool thing is
we're
like
all
this-
mad here.
Oh yeah. Cool thing is like the entire way Tar Valon is designed. Like everything is built in this way that's supposed to be this kind of graceful, almost majestic flow.
Yeah, some of the greatest Ogier stonework is at Tar Valon.
Oh yeah.
They've managed to keep a lot of that.
Rand. Tar Valon is beautiful.
The beautiful groves. Yeah.
There's
I love how
grove here, Rand.
I love how pissed off Loyal gets every single time he goes to a grove and it gets cut down, and he's just so super angry about it.
Why?
And
did
my
they
heart
cut
goes out
down
to
the
him, really.
Grove in Carrion.
I'm the Lorax and I speak for the trees.
I speak for the groves.
But the thing that I keep forgetting is some of those buildings, some of those majestically created buildings are linked by sky bridges. Which is not
that's
something
true.
you see in any, at least not that we see in any other city that is displayed, for the reader.
I wonder, just as a sort of a comparison, I wonder how similar Tar Valon, like the buildings and the architecture of Tar Valon, is to, say, buildings from 1,000 years ago, or buildings from the Age of Legends,
Or Ruidion.
see, exactly. Like it's a really, really, really cool sort of, bit of brain candy where we figure out how does it look, because it talks about when you go into the tower. And again, this is not specifically about the tower, but it does talk about in the tower that the floors and the furniture and the railings are very polished and worn down with use over, centuries of use. And so it's kind of a fun like idea or concept to think, how do these buildings resemble buildings from the past?
So I think they would resemble buildings from the past of the region. The reason I would think that they wouldn't resemble necessarily the buildings in Ruidion is because the Ogier are very much of, working with stone is something they're good at, but not something they enjoy because it alters the natural landscape. And they talk about stone singing, trying to do as much as they can to make the stone flow and look smooth and natural. And I would imagine that within doing that, they try to do something that fits in with the local landscape. So the stonework that they would do in Tar Valon would
we all know we do some we all do some Sedone singing.
I literally thought you were taking a fat rip from the vape.
You Ogier ain't shit.
Hey man,
we all stone sing whenever we want to.
You got your chisel, bro?
Whoa.
I mean, you gotta.
Would you like to stone sing with me?
I'll put a long handle on your ass.
Would you like to stone sing with me?
Yes. I'll bet Elon Musk is a Wheel of Time fan. Maybe not, though. He's like one of those guys that probably is at work all the time. So he's probably never read a book in his life that wasn't some sort of like entrepreneurial thing. How about I say this? I feel like he would be a Wheel of Time fan if he were like the rest of us peasants and not a gajillion, bajillion billionaire.
Probably.
I mean, he probably also celebrates Festivus like the rest of us.
Hey-o.
The thing I like about the architecture and everything of Tar Valon, besides the simple fact that a lot of it's Ogier done, is just like how everything meshes together. Well, not everything, because the bridges mesh into the defensive walls, which fit with and match the White Tower itself. And there's a couple other buildings that are notably of Ogier construction that kind of blend in with that kind of Mystique style architecture. But the walls are known to, they're one of their big features, and it gives them their name, the Shining Walls, is because they shine white in the sunlight. So the first time we get to see a structure like this is the main bridge into White Bridge that gave it its name, to where it looks as smooth as glass, but shines white in the sunlight. Just like the bridges and the defensive walls do here in Tar Valon. And to put it in perspective, the shortest bridge that goes over the River Erin, or Erinon, into Tar Valon, the shortest one is a mile long. So it's as long as the majority of the island is wide.
That's what she said?
I don't think that's a compliment. Did we lose Josh?
I mean, he might have stepped away.
What?
Hey, there he is.
I'm here.
Hello.
Hi.
I just feel like everything breaks whenever it gets really quiet, and I'm just like, I don't want to do this by myself. Oh no, you're fine.
My bad. I'll start announcing.
Oh no, you don't have to. You're fine.
No, I think you got a really great point with the Ogier, like sort of blending the architecture into the surrounding areas. They're not going to make anything that stands out or is contradictory.
Like Shining Walls of Tar Valon.
Well, they do still have a mandate of sorts. They
No,
do
I know.
have
I
to
just
still
thought it
be
was funny that
working.
you were like, yeah, they're
Kinda
not
be
going to make
fair.
anything that stands out. Like a giant
fair.
ass white tower and sky bridges and
What?
To
shining
be
white
fair,
walls.
we know that the
Exactly.
Trollocs breached the defensive walls during the Trolley Wars. So it is possible that the entire city kind of had the same design and look motif, and that a lot of it got destroyed and burned down by the Trollocs in the Trolloc Wars, because it was only supposed to be a portion of the White Tower itself that was partially destroyed. So it would make sense for damage to the walls to be repaired by Ogier in the way that they were originally done, and the same with the White Tower. But if you're in the middle of the Trolloc Wars, imagine how much money you're having to spend to fund armies and fund your people and all the supplies. So instead of getting the
$5.
entire city, yeah, I need about $3.50.
Yes.
But I mean, isn't it all too easy for it to make just financial and from a leadership standpoint of the Amerlin at the time to say, look, the stuff that you guys made that's only partially destroyed, we want you to rebuild, but the rest of the city will rebuild because we just can't
Yeah.
afford everything that we need to get and pay you guys and justly compensate you, for the rest of it. So repair the damage to the walls, any damage to the bridges, the White Tower itself. There's a couple buildings that are notable landmarks to repair, and then of course make sure the Grove is in tip-top condition. Do that first so you guys don't feel so bad being so far from a steading, and we'll take care of the rest. And that might be why
Right.
the majority of Tar Valon has different architecture and what would be considered a newer architecture than the White Tower itself, which I don't even know if they really consider it old architecture because it's in its own realm being Ogier built.
So it's kind of funny. I mean, like, I do appreciate that that feeling on it, and I like that you as a person think that would be kind of the right thing to do. Also, what fucking Amerlin in the history of the White Tower do you think went, you know what, guys? Ogier, we're just gonna pay you fairly, and like we don't want to worry about like we're whatever. Then we'll do that. No, Amerlin seats are like Ogier are coming in and building stuff. If we don't have enough money, we go make more money. Fuck you.
All right, Elida.
Right?
That's Elida. I don't think Suon would do that.
Well, and they've talked about
Except for the
Amarillans in the
harbors.
past that have been really great, and Amarillans who have been really terrible. I mean, they've said that Egwene, when she's doing her study of the Amarillans and the history of the different Amarillans, she finds some that are just terrible, and she finds some that are fantastic. And I mean, that's just how it is. Some of them are great, some of them aren't.
I mean,
again,
I totally
see
get
a
it,
flaw
but
in my
all of
theory.
them do have this like Tar Valon White Tower attitude, even if all of them are not Elida garbage.
Right.
Like there is a spectrum, but it's also like the spectrum only goes so far in the one direction. Even Egwene, once she becomes Amerlin, is a little like, the White Tower knows, bitch. And you're like, really? Child? Like, calm down.
Yep. Now, the flaw that I can poke in my own theory is how do you maintain the legend that your shining walls are impregnable if you have to change the entire architecture and landscape inside of the walls suddenly for no obviously apparent reason? And I don't think something of that magnitude would be lost in history. It's also kind of shocking that nobody knows that it was ever breached whenever part of the White Tower was destroyed. I call bullshit on the whole, like nobody believes that it was ever truly penetrated and that's a secret
Oh, we
in
all
this
know
hidden
it was
13th
penetrated.
depository. Oh, God. We probably shouldn't use the word penetrated when talking about Vagina Island.
you
Home
kidding?
of
That's the
Randland's
perfect word.
greatest gynecologist.
If you are a woman and you want vagina checked, come down to Tar Valon with Randland's greatest gynecologist.
Come down to the Great Fish Market while you're here.
Ha! See
Oh
what
my
you
God.
did there.
All right. To the 10
And
followers
now
that
we've
just
lost
left.
You're right.
There's no point in making a statement to them now. They're already gone.
Well, that's
Everybody's trying to
rest
keep
of
and
you,
gain followers.
please
We're trying
hang
to
out.
get rid of them.
We're weeding out. We're weeding out.
We're weeding out the weak.
Only the strong survive in the Black Tower.
Listen, if you don't take and wind up
If
bursting
you
out
can't
laughing
take
at work,
dick jokes,
take dick jokes.
that's why I said it like that.
Clever.
It's a joke, not a dick.
Okay.
Don't take it so
We have-
hard.
So I just found a
We have
discrepancy.
devolved.
What's up?
So it's described that at the widest point of the island of Tar Valon is 2 miles across, right? Then I look
Okay.
down at the description of the Ogier Grove, and it says that the Ogier Grove spans 2 miles across.
Oh.
Now this is in the wiki. I will be right back because I have to go to another room to grab my companion.
Oh yeah.
Do it.
grab that
Discrepancy found. We gotta
companion.
fix this shit.
Well, but that is actually something I pointed out
Yeah.
earlier. I can't remember if it was for the pre-show or not.
Oh, you did
But
ask
this
if
is
it's actually
one-
described in the books.
Yeah. This is one of the areas in which the story of the Wheel of Time, fans just kind of have to go, we don't worry about that. Because
We
Robert
don't
Jordan
talk
does
about
such
it.
an amazing job of world building culturally and psychologically and emotionally, but not so great a job at it geographically.
I mean, you're not wrong.
And to be honest, I mean, I don't need to know that Camelin is 386 square kilometers of property with 245 trees. I mean, I don't need to know specific geographies to enjoy a story. So
right? That's like
my
Nathaniel
assumption-
Hawthorne shit.
yeah, my assumption is that it doesn't matter. So he was just like, yeah, whatever. I'm not going to worry about it.
But at the same time, it is also an interesting thing where you're like, but why though?
Exactly.
But why though?
But why? To the Ryan Reynolds gif there. But why?
But why?
Good times.
Indeed. Oh, Ryan. We know you're a listener.
Ryan. He is. He
You're
called
one
me
of our
the other day.
favorites.
I don't want to. I don't want to brag. No, but he called me. He's like, "What's up?"
He did not.
Shh,
So,
don't-
surprisingly, I have no idea. Well, not surprisingly, I have no idea what I came back in on. All I heard was Ryan and one of our favorites. And I'm not sure that I want to know.
Ryan Reynolds is a listener,
Oh.
and he's one of our favorites. That was the whole conversation. Now you're caught up.
Okay. Fantastic. I agree. Love you, Ryan Reynolds. You did great in Pikachu.
Hashtag tangent time. If Ryan Reynolds were to be cast on the Wheel of Time, who would he play? Go.
Wyramon. No, I'm just kidding. He would actually make a way better Talmanas than he would of Wyramon.
Yeah. He would definitely have to be. He could even be one of the High Lords of
Asmodean.
Tyr, but he'd definitely have to be one of those like arrogant, sarcastic sons of a
I want to
bitches.
see him as
But
Asmodean.
why? Okay.
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 that.
Can you imagine the
okay.
scene where Asmodean dies and all he's just, you two, fuck, and then it just cuts off. So the section in the companion on Tar Valon is actually it's super short. It's not even a full paragraph.
Wow.
Really?
It says an independent city-state and a walled island on the River Aranon. Location of the White Tower. The government was administered by a council of Aes Sedai chosen by the Hall of the Tower and included a great library and an Ogier Grove. It suffered a great fire in FY 642. Some slight damage was done to the White Tower itself and to the Tower Library. Population reached 500,000 to 700,000 people before the last battle. So that does help with the architecture argument. So they might have just said, no, nobody penetrated the walls, but shit did go fucking full London fire. Or the Great
So
Fire
wait,
of Chicago.
are we to
Chicago
understand that
fire!
Chicago is ready to burn down
Tar
again.
Valon does have a separate independent system of governmental body? Then is that what I just
sounds
heard
like the
from
hall
That
chooses a,
does sound
it
like
sounds like
it.
the hall chooses a council to oversee the runnings of the city. And I imagine since they're still
Okay.
Aes Sedai, ultimately the Amerlin seat has the final say in the city, but they have a
Clearly.
parliamentary
I
body.
mean, like they make that very clear in the
But they basically
book.
have like a parliamentary body
that fucking
day-to-day.
Amerlin seat says jump, and everybody's like,
Yeah,
how
she's-
high?
She's the end all be all when it comes to
Yeah.
those kinds of things.
But I mean, there's
How many people do we put on the guard? As many as I say, motherfucker.
actually there's a little scale map thing I can use here. Let me find something straight to measure with. Definitely can't use my dick.
Do you have anything in your house?
I
that's
knew that
straight?
was coming.
I do. I have many things in my house that are straight.
I knew that was coming.
He's just not one of them.
Hey, oh. So, but either way, though, I mean, we're looking at Tar Valon. It's a relatively small patch of Earth in a relatively large continent of being and or existence.
Okay. So at its
As a separate
Sorry, go
thought,
ahead.
too.
so using the
go ahead.
companion scale.
Oh, I was just going to say,
Jesus fucking Christ, you guys.
it's like when you're walking down the hall and someone's like, step
Yeah,
to the right,
that's
step to
pretty
the
much
left.
every
and,
day of my life.
You
is the
do
way
it at the
feels.
same time, like 3 times in a row.
So using
It's pretty good.
It's just
I
a
like it.
slide
Anyway, so
to
go
the
ahead.
scale
left.
in the companion with the map, the widest part is actually 4 miles across from east to west, or not technically east to
Okay.
west. It's almost like north to south.
Okay.
But the main body of the island, the one that I was talking about, was the shortest one that I was figuring was only anywhere from a mile to a mile and a half, would average about 2 miles. So using that same measure, the Ogier Grove at its widest point almost fits the scale perfectly because it's a 2 mile scale.
But
Okay.
is it 8 Mile?
No,
Hey,
the island probably is actually about 8
It is
miles long.
definitely not. So,
I mean,
very,
it's
very, very
probably
small.
actually
So
like
Guam-
7 miles long, but
So
when
Guam
people
was
talk about it, they always add at least a mile.
like fishing, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so
Uh-huh.
according to the companion, it's actually
Fishing.
fucking 12 miles
No,
long. Jesus Christ. WhatFandom.com. Why don't you get a companion and learn how to use a ruler? I actually love you guys, but
Oh,
you do have
snap.
you do have an issue here in
So-
your description.
Yeah.
Guam is probably a
but-
pretty apt description.
What?
He said
I'm saying
Guam.
Guam as a geographic metaphor or parallel is probably pretty accurate.
It's
Where'd you
goddamn
get those
accurate.
Good
scores?
Lord. I can't talk good because I got
So for
the
those of you
madness
that when
in
we were
me.
talking about the size of Tar Valon, we're like, no, the vagina is a lot bigger than that. We fixed it. Did you know that the
Do you-
vagina could expand?
Do you guys remember?
400%?
Do you guys remember the original Predator movie?
Yes.
I don't like where this is going.
Warning: incoming dirty joke. When the commandos are in the jungle, he's like, "Yeah, I told my wife, or my wife said you could use a little pussy," and I said to her, "Yeah, yours is as big as a house." Good times.
So back to the Ogier
Wah,
Grove. It does actually span 2 miles across.
Oh yeah, that's what we were talking
Um,
about.
Hey, sometimes you just have to expand to fit your Ogier Grove.
So
I mean, we Ogier are big guys.
the Ogier Grove It's surrounded by an endless series of spiraling stone arches, each 5 spans high and 10 spans wide. It contains a vast array of a shrubbery and trees.
Shrubbery! The madness is thick tonight.
You must cut down the tallest tree in the forest with a herring.
It has
Anyway, continue,
oaks,
Andrew.
elms, leatherleaves, firs, and great trees, which are very large trees revered by the Ogier.
Great trees.
Much about them isn't known because they're not mentioned very
But
much in the books.
But no chora
Yeah.
trees.
But there is a
No
stand of
Avendosora,
great
that
trees
is
grown
correct.
upon the field
No
of
chora
Marilor
cuttings.
after the dragon's peace is established. So some of them there.
There's a
Damn.
what now?
There is a grove of
Yeah.
great trees grown on the
Not
fields
okay
of
trees, not
Marilor
good trees.
after the dragon's peace.
So not just
What?
good trees, not just okay trees, but great trees.
Yep.
And
Excellent trees.
yep,
Most
and
excellent
as
trees.
our poor intrepid trio of Elaine and Nynaeve and Egwene find out, it does also contain a waygate, like every other grove.
Mm-hmm.
That is right. That is true. As because Leandrin, that rotten bitch Leandrin.
Whoa. You're correct, but whoa.
Oh, dude, I'm doing my reread, as many of you know, and that scene came up again, and it was just painful. It was painful. I wanted to punch that little bitch in her face.
First read through, you're like, oh, okay, I can understand
You-
why
you
this
mean
may
in
go.
her-
And then looking back, you're just like, how fucking dense can you be?
Right though? Oh,
In
She
her
deserves everything she
rosebud
gets.
mouth.
yes.
I'm gonna punch you in your rosebud mouth.
Every time I hear
She
that
deserves
description, it just sounds like a
everything she
puckered
got.
asshole.
I mean, correct.
No, but so they have a grove, they have a waygate. They've got it's a beautiful area, and you know it's got ancient architecture. It's got a whole bustling city and village. It's got, as we had previously mentioned, 6 bridges, and docks are the only way to get to this island, so that makes it fairly easy to defend. But as you know, and then of course, as we mentioned, that shit was so royally messed up during the Trolley Wars that Trollocs were able to breach the bridges and actually burn their way through the city and get through the shining walls even a little bit.
Think of the logistics of that. If the shortest bridge is a mile long, that means they watched the Trollocs fight across the bridges and make their way for a full fucking mile, at least on one bridge, and couldn't stop them.
And that they're fighting against tower-trained guards, tower-trained warders, and I cannot believe that Aes Sedai were not also present on those bridges driving Trollocs
I mean,
back.
you have to think, how
Well,
hard is it to put
except
up a
that-
wall of air and just not let them through?
But remember, you've got dreadlords as well. Didn't you have dreadlords in
It's
the
called the
Dreadlords.
Trolloc War. I don't know the specifics, but I can look it up in the
Oh,
companion.
there were dreadlords, and you fucking know it.
You're a dreadlord.
I'll fucking do it again.
Oh shit. Oh shit.
No, but it is also interesting that, again, this was war, and the Shadow doesn't give a fuck. So you
No, they
know
don't.
that
Oh yeah.
there were hundreds of thousands of Trollocs just dead on those fucking bridges.
Oh yeah. They probably had to. So again, another tangent, another side note here. One of my favorite stories is the story of the battle at Thermopylae, when the Persian invaders were coming into Greece, and the Spartans, it was actually closer to several thousand soldiers, but there were only 300 Spartan knights, you know, and all their hoplites and whatever. but there were representatives from other city-states as well. But they were talking about how the hard-packed earth, it was a trade route, it was a highway, and the earth was packed so hard that it was a solid walkway. But by the end of the battle, so many of the Persian army had fallen that the fluids from the dead bodies, the blood and the other things that end up leaking out, and the violence in the charges and stampedes and steps and things like that had actually churned that earth up. And it talks about men sinking to their knees in mud and muck that came from that. And it's just like, whoa, that's such a terrible. So when you start talking about that many Trollocs, like, I can only imagine the state of things when the Trollocs were finally repelled, and just, oh, what a nightmare that must have been.
Well, yeah, probably. It probably really fucking sucked.
Yep.
But the Trollocs were repelled, and the White Tower was, victorious after, I'm sure, tremendous loss. I imagine there was a lot of damage done to this. The city itself is probably not ancient. The city itself is probably relatively new, given the fact that, I can't imagine the Trollocs not razing the entire place and just completely leveling everything. I can't even imagine.
It does seem that the prevailing, the story that they put out in the mass was that there was a great fire. Like, well, what year was the Trolley War?
It was shortly
somewhere
after...
between Shut Up and Your Mom.
I don't think that's accurate.
Oh,
but it was actually between 1000 and 1350 AB. Fucktard.
Whoa, hey.
How does that line up with Arthur Hawkwing? I thought Arthur Hawkwing was one of the peoples that fought in the Trolley Wars.
He was one of the homies.
I don't know. I'd have to look.
In the Alector Wars.
No.
It doesn't.
Oh, maybe no, he was not.
With the fires that they talk about, because the fires are like 600 and something.
Yeah, so the Trolley Wars is 1,000, between 1,000 and 1350.
Remember that those are two different things? I think they had two different labels. Because you also have to look at the thing after that, because there are, 900 Third Age, and then there's 900 Second Age, and then there's 600 First Age, and then there's 400 Age of Legend. Like, there are so many qualifiers on that.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. The Trolley Wars between 1000 and 1350 AB.
Okay.
So after breaking.
Yes.
Yeah, and Arthur Hawkwing he was around from 912 to 994 FY.
Yeah, and the fires that burnt a lot of Tar Valon were before that. They were in FY 642.
Damn.
Okay.
So the fire doesn't add up with the Trolley War thing. But if Tar Valon main city was built by Ogier, then they could have redone construction then, in which it would have made sense that over time things were torn down and rebuilt.
Okay. Yeah, so in order, when you talk about destruction of Tar Valon and destruction of those areas, in chronological order, you've got the Trolley Wars first, and then you've got the Arthur Hawkwing and his invasion, and then after Arthur Hawkwing is when the Great Fire of Tar Valon happens, but it's shortly after Arthur Hawkwing.
Well, no, the fire, he was 900s FY, so the fire was in between the Trolley Wars and Arthur Hawkwing.
That sounds correct.
Oh, shoot. No, you're right. No, I got those backwards. Sorry.
Oh, it's fine.
It was the Trolley Wars, then the fire,
and not piss off
then Arthur Hawkwing. But Arthur Hawkwing didn't actually make landfall on the island, right? He laid siege.
Yeah, they laid siege.
But he didn't ever actually make landfall on the island
No,
itself.
they didn't.
So as far as when it comes to terms of destruction of Tar Valon, the fire and the Trolley War are the only two events that really have destruction of those areas.
Yeah. So with the Trolley Wars, you had heavy raids from the Shadow Spawn into what were the Borderlands then. And then there were Aes Sedai and the 10 Nations Alliance that tried to face it, but were unable to contain it. And they kept going deeper into the Westlands because they also destroyed the Ogier-built city of Mafal Dadara. Dadara now.
Mafal
Dadara.
Dadara,
Yeah,
which
Dadara
is
now.
which is Falmoran now.
Yeah. And then
Mafal Dadara.
Yeah, and then the entire nation of Aramadel. There's no D in that. Whatever. Aramel. There we go. Was overrun and completely destroyed.
Not yet.
And with that gone, that's when the Shadow Spawn were able to sweep further south, such as Eridol and Coromanda. And around that time is when they might have launched the first of 4 major assaults on Tar Valon.
4 major assaults.
Yep.
Along mile-long bridges. Jesus Christ, you crazy dreadlords.
So that's the thing. Like, I know there were people in, on Twitter who, they were so happy to say, ooh, that, Aes Sedai are unstoppable, Ashaman are unstoppable. That would really be awesome if that were the case. Guys, it's not the case. There are ways to kill Aes Sedai, as evidenced by the fact that we have, all of these scenarios in which Aes Sedai they laid siege to him and said, hey, we're going to take you out. We can do this. And they were, largely successful in some scenarios. Yeah. The worst, obviously the worst scenario being the Trolley Wars, but Artur Hawkwing was able to pin him down. He was able to make sure that every Aes Sedai in the world was dead except for the ones that were at Tar Valon. And then I guess there was one that was serving him, who eventually was stupid and got what she deserved as well.
Yeah, because in 1251 AB, Rashima Karen Mosa was named and raised to the Amerlin seat, and she's the one that orchestrated a number of counterattacks and is responsible for the defeat and destruction of the Trolloc armies during the 4th assault on Tar Valon itself in 1290 AB. And after that, she led a 10-year campaign of the armies of the light that ultimately culminated in the Battle of Magandi in 1301 AB, considered the most decisive battle since the War of the Shadow.
It's definitely funny because I imagine in some ways the Star Wars Episode 1 Anakin Skywalker attitude for a lot of people in Randland when they're walking around and they're like, hey, how did you get that laser sword? You must be a Jedi. And Qui-Gon's like, maybe I killed a Jedi and I took it off him. And then he's like, nah, you can't kill a Jedi.
Holy shit, listen to this. In a colossal engagement lasting several days, this is the Battle of Magandi. The Shadow armies were destroyed and scattered, although Rashima Karen Mosa was killed during the battle by an entire detachment of dreadlords, 9 of whom she took with her.
Damn!
Fucking badass.
That is a bad bitch right there. Good job, girl.
I love bad bitches. That's my fucking problem.
Oh, Rashima. Dude, this one's for you, Rashima. This is a toast to Rashima.
Okay, that was a really weird sound to make after a toast.
Liquid madness.
A toast to you, Rashima. Yeah.
Hey, that was the glug of me taking a long pull.
Oh, I'm aware. It just was a weird sound.
Are you?
Yeah. Yes. Yes, I'm aware.
But no, that's awesome.
Yeah, that's pretty fucking amazing.
another interesting thing, Tar Valon has seen a lot. It was construction on the city started in 92 AB, 98 AB, and it wasn't completed for 100 years, 202 AB.
Damn.
So Tar Valon has been around for a long time.
Oh shit! I totally thought that Tar Valon was pre-breaking. Holy crap! That just blew my mind.
Nope.
Nope, they didn't come around until after the breaking, and that was, I think, that's probably predominantly the White Tower itself being constructed, not including the city or starting
I
construction.
would
on the White
imagine
Tower.
so. Yeah,
But I mean,
It was
their history is absolutely fucking redonkulous. Like the amount
Yeah,
of influence
from
that
day
that
one.
it grew and shrunk and grew again over the years.
I mean, sometimes it gets cold.
Yeah.
right.
So it's since the War of
From-
100 Years, Tar Valon. Sorry, go ahead. I know I keep cutting you off.
No, you're good. I was just going to say, from day one, it was the remaining female Aes Sedai who said, we need a place where we can regroup and, form a strong defensive front. And that's why Tar Valon has the Shining Walls. Because they specifically built this to be a safe haven where the female Aes Sedai who would not go mad could have a base of operations to handle the issues that were facing the rest of the world.
Also known as the men who could channel who are going fucking crazy.
Yep.
Word.
So
That's us.
since the War of the 100 Years, Tar Valon has not claimed any more territory than that which immediately surrounds the White Tower. But none of the
Not
lands
geographically.
around the city have been claimed by any other kingdom in over 1,000 years. Means that it doesn't really fucking matter. Nobody cares.
True.
But before the Trolley Wars, they controlled a significant amount of territory. It was roughly diamond-shaped landmass or area they controlled on the map. As far west as halfway up the River Luan, which is in the foothills of the Black Hills, and as far east as Kinslayer's Dagger, as far north as the confluence of the Arinan and River Anteo, and as far south as where the River Luan and Aranan converged.
Fuck, that is a huge area.
Yeah, it's pretty big. Then, let's see. That was during the time where no ruler held a throne without the Aes Sedai permission, basically.
Right.
Then you had Tar Valon during the Free Years, after the Trolley Wars, where their direct control expanded in size to the north and northeast. The River Aranan formed the northern border of its influence all the way east to where the River Aranan met the River Mora, and it was now bordered by Romel to the west, El Salam to the northwest, Ramdashar to the north, Elida to the east, and Tova, Shandal, and Cambron, Barin to the south. Fuck these words that I can't pronounce. But
I'm going to give you a little hint. No one can pronounce them.
But even though their landmass,
Bullshit. Robert Jordan could pronounce them.
Not consistently.
not anymore.
Oh.
Too far.
Accurate,
Too far.
but sad.
My inner dark humor just could not be held
Oh,
in
man.
for a second. Like, and I know y'all heard me cut off because I was like, no.
Yeah, I heard your inner struggle. It was very present.
It's, you know what? It's the
Yeah.
taint. Blame the taint. Hashtag blame the
So,
taint.
even though they
Always blame
controlled
the taint.
more area at this time, their power and prestige had faded some. Aes Sedai rulers of nations became less common, and there's none recorded after Queen Somara of Masanjar.
Manetherin.
And she ruled in FY 450 and may have been deposed by the Aes Sedai for putting her kingdom's concern before theirs.
Ooh, what a bunch
And
of
then
bitches.
it was Tar Valon's territory was overrun and conquered by Alter Hawkwing in the spring and summer of FY 973, after which he besieged the city. And since then, they have made no claims to the lands that are out of the sight of the White Tower or basically off of Vagina Island.
So let me ask this then, and I feel like it's relevant in some ways, and I'm probably going to find it here as I Google it right now. But
Google.
Ruidian, right,
Was it
is the
Chewbacca?
city in the waste. What the Aes Sedai clearly knew about the construction and founding of Ruidian. I mean, they clearly knew about that. They were at least some of them did.
Sure.
They were there helping with the construction.
Sort of.
So yeah, sort of.
I mean, there were a very small number of them that were doing that. Yes.
So we know that the ter'angreal that the Gen Aiel carried for the Aes Sedai, many of them, were scattered across the lands as the Gen traveled. But the ones that the Gen Aiel were able to, successfully carry ended up in Ruidian. When did the Aes Sedai forget about Ruidian? I feel like there's something very, very lost here, that the Aes Sedai should have known that there was a cache of ter'angreal carried by the Gen Aiel, but the Aes Sedai where we're at in 999 NE, we don't know. Like, the Aes Sedai have no idea about the Aiel. None whatsoever. And the Aiel are like, oh, it is said that when we fail the Aes Sedai again, and the Aes Sedai are like, oh yeah, we'll
yeah,
play
the
this.
second time you fail
I
us.
kind of
Yeah.
feel
do what I say, and I won't,
So,
bring that down upon your head.
There is actually an answer to that question. Now, it's a little bit of a cop-out answer, and I do understand that, but there is definitely an answer to that question. And the answer is the events that were happening at that time, because, of course, the Aes Sedai knew about the creation of... or the Aes Sedai knew about the sending off of the Gen Aiel. It is unclear as to how many of them actually knew about the building of Ruidian, because the building of Ruidian actually appears much later in the flashbacks, or it actually appears much earlier in the flashbacks, but the flashbacks go backwards chronologically. So it's chronologically much later than the sending off of the Gen Aiel. And the sending off of the Gen Aiel happened because the Aes Sedai wanted to save the Aiel from the breaking in some ways, because they sent them off as the world was going to hell.
Right. And they also wanted to, but that was the thing, is the Aiel had thousands of ter'angreal that they were trying to keep away from the men
who were going crazy.
Who were going mad.
So they already knew that the men were breaking the world. This is probably after a number of events have happened that have made it very clear that the men cannot be trusted anymore because they're going fucking crazy. And they've probably destroyed a city or two, or at least taken thousands of lives, or blah, blah, blah. So there is at least a contingent of women who sends the Gen Aiel off to go ahead and protect these ter'angreal and sangreal and angreal. And in the chaos, how many of them actually knew about it in the first place? In the chaos, how many of those women actually died during that time to not be able to partake or to impart the rest of their plan or the location or anything like that to other sisters who are now still alive. And on top of that, you do have a certain amount of time that happens between sending the Gen Aiel off and Ruidian being started. And so now you have a question of how many of the people who originally sent the Gen Aiel off knew that Ruidian was the plan, or did the plan change and Ruidian became part of the plan later? So now you have all of this confusion as to whether who the fuck knows that the Gen-Aiel are gone? Who the fuck knows that they have Terran Grial? Who the fuck knows that Ruidion is being made? And how many of those people who knew any or all of those things are still alive to tell anybody?
Well, and that's kind of where I was going with that. Is I feel like this is a very great example of how completely screwed they were.
Yep.
The fact that nobody remained alive or cognizant enough to know that the Gen-Aiel even existed.
Yep.
And then 3,000 years later, they don't even know that the Aes Sedai had servants.
Yep.
I mean, now granted, like, we don't even think, like, we, you know, borrowing from our own, like, physical brains here in real life, we're in, you know, 2019, 2,000 years ago, 2/3 of the time it took to have, you know, the breaking of the world. We go back, you know, to 1000 AD or 1000 BC, and we don't even know what was happening then. Like, we have no idea what was going on.
Pretty much.
It's even difficult to picture what was going on at, you know, 500 AD. You know, when we start getting into like the 1200s, 1400s, etc., that's when we start to go, okay, we've got some historical examples of that. But just to give everyone sort of a scale or scope of what we're dealing with, we're dealing with people who were so screwed that they weren't able to accurately pass that information on. And then 3,000 years later, the White Tower doesn't even know that the Gen-Aiel existed and the Gen-Aiel were their servants.
Yep. And I will throw out there
crazy.
that it's ever so slightly a different situation. And again, you're totally right. So I'm not actually disagreeing with anything that you're saying. In our history, like sort of the real world history, which I'm leaving out the fact that we're just actually living in a later age. But anyway, or in an earlier age, sorry.
Or an earlier
yeah, that's
age.
right. Or an earlier age. Or both, because the wheel just keeps spinning.
That's right. There are no beginnings or endings.
Exactly. But we actually went from a time that there was basically nothing, like very little civilization in general, all the way up to now, where I think that we would definitely consider ourselves pretty good at the dissemination of
here's something else that
information.
might help explain.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. I thought you were.
Can I finish my thought?
You take very long pauses, my good friend.
No, sorry.
Sometimes
On occasion. So we are sort of in that trajectory. They sort of presumably had the same trajectory all the way up to the Age of Legends, because of course there's no information on a like previous Age of Legends before the Age of Legends that then got fucked,
Right.
and like now we're in the Age of Legends. So we would sort of consider the Age of Legends now for us in modern society, just in their ability to go ahead and disseminate information and write things down and have a history and blah, blah, blah. But
Right.
then it's actually very telling that after the breaking of the world, they basically go back to that early history where fucking nothing's written down. Very little of the farmers around who are just trying to survive can even read anymore, and let alone write down history, and nobody gives a shit about books because only scholars do that, and blah, blah, blah. So they basically revert back to this like way earlier time. And you're lucky if you find anything from 2000 AD in 5000 AAD, like that kind of idea. And it's crazy to think about that, because again, they even had like this sort of age that we're in some ways. And then it just got so fucked that they went all the way back to the previous, like it's so messed up. Anyway, go ahead.
It is.
Something that might help
terrible.
explain the loss of knowledge is, I think it's very easy for us, because I know I do all the time, to fall into the idea that after the breaking, all of the female Aes Sedai were already like a cohesive group, and they weren't by any means. And this comes in, the history of Ellis saying to Shar, the first Amerlin seat, who is first mentioned in historical records in 47 AB. And she's then identified as the leader of 12 women representing a lowercase or an Aja, not the capital case Aja that we know as what makes up the different factions in the tower. And at this time, an Aja was simply just a temporary grouping of female channelers that were named Aes Sedai that held a common position in a debate. It was just a group of people that agreed in a discussion. And it's the history of the Aes Sedai, to me, and maybe it's because I keep forgetting it, maybe it's because I keep overlooking it, whatever the case is surprisingly ruthless. Because what they do for 50 years with Elisane leading this one group that basically winds up becoming, well, not basically, does become the White Tower and who we know as the Aes Sedai in their entirety now. For 50 years, they tracked down any other rival groups that claim to be Aes Sedai and said, join us or we're going to steal you. And that's what they did. They would either join or they would be
Join
stilled.
us or
And
die.
it's not until 98 AB, 51 years later, that she is first mentioned as holding the rank of Amyrlin's seat. Now, it probably has been several years at this point, but this is the first mention. And at that point, she's advised by a council of 7 women,
Well, and of
who
course,
may have been the founders of the 7 Ajas known today.
The sitters. Yep.
right? Which is actually what I was just about to say when you first brought this up, and like again, this went exactly off in the direction that is what I was thinking. Is the she is running around with the white Aja or whatever it is, and she's meeting new groups of women who are claiming to be Aes Sedai, and she's like, "Hey, what are you?" And they're like, "We're the bunch of people who think that we need to prepare for a second breaking in Trolley Wars, so we're fighting Aes Sedai." And then she goes, "Cool, join us or die." And they go, "Okay, hold on," or not join us or die, but join us or be stilled, which is worse than death to Aes Sedai. And then they're like, "Well, but we don't want to." And then she's like, "All right, well, what can we do to convince you to join us without being stilled?" And then they're like, "Well, how about we get the green Aja?" And they're like, "Done, let's go." And you've got all of these like fucking Protestant religions that are all still technically Christian, but like are absolutely different thought processes and different whatevers that all just show up in the White Tower, and they're like, "We get our own rooms." And all the others are like, all the other Ajas are like, "Yeah, we also get our own rooms."
The thing is,
and fucking the Amyrlin seat's got to be standing up at the top of this tower, being like,
the thing
"How
is,
the fuck is this ever gonna work?"
that the way these groups came together was you would have several of these lowercase Ajas, and there'd be a group that said, well, the most important thing we can do is get rid and disable all of the male channelers that are going insane. And there's other groups saying, no, the most important thing we can do is figure out how to heal them and heal the other ails that everybody has. Then another group that's saying, no, the best thing we can do is marry a bunch of men, essentially, train them how to be amazing warriors, give them the benefits of bonding us, and be ready to just fight. Then you got this other group that's like, well, no, why don't we be diplomatic and get the entire world to work with us? And so you have all these groups that have all these different ideas of what's the best way to move forward, that Elisane Tashar essentially forcibly brings together. And over time, these groups are just, they're like, okay, well, we have all these different sections in the tower that have different ideas of how to do things, and we need to all have a consensus. So you have the first like sitters and Hall of the Tower created, to where each group has their leader. Yeah,
and thus democracy
it was born so it could ultimately fail in the end before Egwene anyway.
Pretty much.
Well, even then though, it's not a bad way to start out, because they were able to found Tar Valon, have a safe haven, have a place where channelers could come and regroup and, have a base of operations where they could start to address the different situations, just like you said, with their own sort of filter, with their own understanding of what they believe is the best way to face the situation. You know, it started out as a really great thing, and props, okay, to the White Tower, because it took them almost 3,000 years to get to the point where the Dragon Reborn is what would, you know, cause them to break and have to really take a lot of introspection and a lot of look inside and say, we got to fix some things if we're going to be ready for Tarmangaiden. And that's one of the things I love about the story of Tar Valon is how, I guess, how resilient they are. You know, we don't typically agree with the Aes Sedai and their methods and how they do things and why they do things. Even, but
I've never
we do
agreed
agree
with an Aes Sedai in my entire life. That's what makes me a true member of the White Tower, you pretender.
No, wait, the what? Which tower?
The Black Tower, you pretender.
Busted.
Oh.
Edit that out.
Ladies and gentlemen, the taint is strong tonight.
When they started building the city.
Oh,
go
boy.
ahead, sir. You got me to.
No,
Go ahead.
I have nothing.
I thought someone was like talking right.
I was about to say, you said they were started to build the city.
Finishing a thought. I didn't want to cut somebody off again.
No.
Okay. So they started building the city,
No,
like we've
good.
already said, in 98.
No, you good?
You son of a bitch.
Oh,
you
actually,
son of a bitch. Sorry, T Green, but one of your sons turned out to save mankind. The other one's a fucking turd.
You son of a bitch.
So they started building the city in 98 AB, and it was
knows.
completed in 202 AB. And it wasn't until 335 AB that
Right.
Tar Valon was attacked for the first time ever. After they captured and
Damn.
Yeah, so they held it for a
Yeah.
good 100 years
or at least
before,
seriously tested. They probably had a
before
couple
its
people
defenses
that tried
were
to,
even tested.
raid it or something, but nothing that really matters. And it wasn't until they captured
Yeah.
and stilled one of the false dragon, Rowland Darksbane.
Nothing really.
And that's whenever his followers attacked. They were like, "We're gonna free him," but it was
Yes.
repulsed by the tower guard alone. Like it didn't really need the Aes Sedai.
Repelled,
Yes.
not repulsed.
I mean,
Right.
They weren't
means the
disgusted
same.
by them. They were
Repulse
repelled.
is like to forcibly push.
I'm
like
sure
a
they were
forcibly
repulsed.
Push away. Repelled is just to be bounced back.
That's
Ooh. Oh shit. We got a verbose.
I have a feeling he's looking up the actual
theological
definitions right now to prove me wrong.
computatorial event.
yeah, no, you're totally right. The first definition is drive
Boom.
back. You are 100% correct. It is not until the second definition that is cause someone to feel an intense distaste and aversion. Damn.
Andrew, you a smart
You
motherfucker.
are on it today, dude.
Not really. I just thought of like repulsor rifles,
Nice.
and that's how I
Nice.
that's how I kept it in mind.
I like it. I'm down. I'm in.
Speaking of Baby
so
Yoda.
it's after that. Oh God. So we get the fun of the Trolley Wars after this.
You use fun in a weird way.
Oh yeah.
You and I have very different.
And then they
definitions of
weren't-
fun.
I mean, and then Tar Valon wasn't even threatened again until the War of the Second Dragon 1,000 years later in FY 943. After the false dragon Yer
Amalsan.
Amalsan. Yeah, that guy.
That guy.
Yeah,
That dude.
what that guy said.
Yeah. So he was captured by Aes Sedai that were allied to King Otter Pendrag Conreal, the Hawkwing, and was brought to Tar Valon for trial and a large army of his followers exceeding 100,000 in number launched an attack on the city.
Yes.
They managed to seize 2 of the bridges and fought their way into the city.
Yes.
And it was actually Hawkwing that led his own army into the city and then pitched what the fuck? Basically, they fought in the streets until they reached the tower grounds, and then they were finally defeated and driven out of the city.
Right. And that's what I was gonna, and that's the important thing to remember there is that Hawkwing had managed to kill or drive back every living Aes
To
Sedai.
repulse them?
He repulsed them all the way back to the White Tower. Every living Aes Sedai was holed up in the White Tower. Every single one.
De Tower de Negro?
No. The Tower Los Blanco.
I am
We're in the
so
Del Negro.
fucking
Dude, you are
backwards
off
right now. I don't know what's happening.
Like,
Guys,
the taint is strong with you tonight,
help me.
my friend.
And so, like, the last, outside of current events in the books, the last significant battle that happened anywhere near, that was around and involved Tar Valon at all, is called the Battle of the Shining Walls,
Mm-hmm.
but had nothing physically to do with Tar Valon, except for the fact that right outside the city was where the battle happened.
Right.
Between the IL and a contingent of, like, what was it, like 5 or 6 nations?
Yeah, and that's what the other thing I was going to say is that it actually took the Aiel to even make it that far.
Yeah.
Nobody else could
Laman
even.
and his allies is where they tried to make their stand. And once Laman had been executed, the IL were like, cool, we're done. And then they left.
Yeah, and they yeah, I think it's funny how everybody in the wetlands talk about driving the Aiel back at the slopes of Dragonmount, and it's like, no, they did what they came to do. Once the deed was done, they went back.
I mean, okay,
We're done.
to be fair, this is also absolutely a moment where I totally get that. I mean, human beings in general, and I feel like there are Aiel somewhere out there who take credit for victories that they don't necessarily deserve completely because their opponent just got embroiled in something else or blah blah blah. But to everybody in the wetlands, I can always see that one as being like, okay, well, no, they just actually think that's what happened. Is that they put up such a good fight that the Aiel turned around and went away. It's the Aiel who are standing there being like, yeah, no, we just left. Wait, you guys say that you won that war? All right, whatever. We don't care.
Yeah, well, and that's the thing. Everybody in the wetlands, they were like, why would you start a war just to execute one person?
And
like,
why
they
would you stop when you were doing so
with...
well? Like, even if you didn't, even if that's the reason you started a war, you were doing so well. You should have just wiped us all out. So we must have won.
Exactly.
Yes.
Yeah,
and
they can't see the simple fact that the IL, they took their fifth of everywhere they went through, but they didn't go into Kyrian and freaking take it over and hold it. They fucking went through, took it over, and kept chasing Laman's coward dumbass all the way to the outskirts of Tar Valon, where they finally cut his head off.
Exactly.
Wrapped his sword in cloth, because of course none of them would fucking touch it.
But they still took it. Yeah.
Yep.
So Tar Valon has a very rich history, even before.
Yes, this is why wetlanders can't understand Ji-To, because Ji-To says, no, we go in and we kill Laman and we kill everybody in our way to get to Laman, but Laman's the guy we're after. And the wetlanders are like, I'm sorry, lol, what? Like, no, you're doing so well in a war, you keep going in that war and finish it.
It's because in the wetlands we only wage war to conquer or gain power or gain position or something like that. But Ji-To, totally different thing. You will fight a war over honor. Absolutely. That's not even a question.
If someone calls your wife fat, you will take your entire clan and murder their entire clan to get to
We
the
now have the
one
blood feud.
guy who called your wife fat. However, that's your goal. You only kill people on the way to that goal, and you walk up to the sept that you're like going after, and you go, "Hey, give us this guy who called my wife fat." And if they say no, then you kill them all. If they just give you the guy,
So-
you don't even attack their place.
Well, it's even far better if you just like don't kill him. You just reach up and you fight so much better that you
Oh,
grab
yeah,
them
that
and
you
then
touch
hey,
them.
you're now my servant for a year and a day.
Oh,
Bitch,
yeah.
guess who gets
Which
to get my
is
water
actually
for
fun.
a year?
It's actually fun because that is actually a Native American tradition called the Counting Coup. And if you count coup, that is it was considered extremely brave if you could tap an enemy warrior on the shoulder without injuring him and getting away without being touched. That was much more courageous, and you gained much more honor by counting coup. And if you could count more coup than anybody else in a battle, you were that much more of a badass.
You
Look
just
it up. It's a real
immediately
thing.
became chief. And just
But that's actually something that Robert Jordan. Now, I don't think they went into a year and a day of servitude. I think that's added in for the Wheel of Time books. But the act of counting coup or collecting Guy Shane is very, very similar, very, very, almost the same.
Yes.
So there's that. So the cool thing about Tar Valon is one of the things I always laud Lord of the Rings for is that they have such a rich history before the story that you're reading even begins. So it gives the city of Ecthelion depth. It gives it a richness that you don't get anywhere else, because nowhere else has 1,000 years of history being written into the story that you're currently reading. And I think that's one thing that Robert Jordan did very, very well is, among the many things that he did very, very well, obviously, but he created such a rich and realistic history that when we get to Tar Valon, and he's talking about, the Ogier built this and the Ogier built that and the people that live here and this and these things that happened. It's super cool because there's 3,000 years of history going into Tar Valon that we're sensing as we read descriptions of the city and how comfortable people are in the city and things like that. So I like that that's sort of a Tar Valon feel.
Well, and
that the first time you even get that.
Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say the first time you even get that and with the city, and they even talk about that when Varen and Egwene and Nynaeve and Elaine are coming into the city, and they talk about how they can see the shining walls. They crest over a hilltop and they can see the shining walls, and they say it. And Varen straight up says, "It'll never get old. It was beautiful the first time I saw it, and it's beautiful now." And I really love how rich the history of Tar Valon is before we even get to our story that we're reading and we're experiencing.
Indeed. And one of the other things that I really appreciate, again, going back to the what Robert Jordan did so well and whatnot, and the history and all of that different stuff, is he throws out these names of previous Amerlins all the time.
Yeah.
And of course, on some
exactly.
level, that like he could have just thrown that in and it didn't really matter and like blah, 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 in terms of like, oh, well, I just have this moment or this name that I made up or whatever. But like later on, he ends up expounding on a lot of those things. Like, oh, novices are taught about this, previous Amerlin who fucked the whole tower. And like, I'm just going to tell you her name now and that she did that. But then later, like, there's another Aes Sedai who's like, oh, don't be a this person. And you're like, why does that make sense? And then they're like, oh, she did this thing. And you're like, wait, what? There's more history. And like, that Robert Jordan had come up with all of these different Amerlins and all of this different history for the White Tower that had put together that had been put together in his mind, and he's just giving you little like tidbits of the rich, ridiculous culture that he has created when he's just like, oh yeah, this Amerlin that I'm just gonna mention here for a moment and tell you not to be like, and you're like, oh fuck, dude, oh fuck.
And to show sort of a parallel between this universe and other universes, Star Wars, one of the things I talk about in Star Wars is that every single stupid little teeny tiny character that's on screen for 10 seconds has a full name and story behind them. And you know, when you're talking about the previous Amarillans that Robert Jordan wrote about, it's the same thing. If you look on the wiki page for, you know, any of the Amarillans, there might only be a paragraph, but there will be information there about that Amarillan, who they were, what they did during their time as Amarillan, and whether or not they were successful or honored or loved, revered, feared, hated, whatever. And you get that sense or that understanding of who they were, and it just gives that richness to the story, and I really like
I
it.
also appreciate these sort of parallels between, like, I mean, obviously any world leaders, I get that, but like specifically in some ways presidents, because if I remember correctly, there's actually at least one or two Amerlins who like only lives for like a week, and then they just like mysteriously die, and you're like, heh, William Pierce.
Mysteriously.
William Henry Harrison.
Yeah,
like,
no, that's
the two, like a number of presidents and whatnot who have been really good or really disliked, or like did really well in this thing or did really badly in this thing, or only lived for 2 weeks in the White House because he got sick during his inauguration, or like whatever. All of these are just like, oh, cool. So there's an Amerlin for that.
Right. It's a really there's an Amerlin for that. No, it's great. I love it. And I think that, you know, this episode kind of became more about the history of Tar Valon and the history of its founding and whatnot, which I'm okay with.
I feel like that was actually
good.
always
like
kind
that.
of intended. We just didn't specifically say it out
Well,
loud.
I thought we were going to,
at least some of my thought. And looking,
oh, see, well, I thought we were going to cover the brief history of it and then be like, but this is the modern culture and why it's like that.
And I think that was like
maybe we'll do that next time.
But the history just winds up being
it's so
absolutely intriguing. It's hard to not talk about all.
It is. It's so good.
So what I'd like to do,
It's
looking
so
at the time we've been recording already, is finish this up by talking about the physical White Tower itself, and then maybe next episode or a future episode, whenever we decide to do it, which we'll know probably after we finish this recording, but the listeners will have to wait for the next recording.
Andrew, you're such a tease.
I try.
Maybe we leave it up to the listeners. Maybe we take a poll and say, hey, what do you guys want to hear?
Or maybe a tower. See what I did there?
But yeah, because I think talking about the physical White Tower itself and kind of like how it's laid out and what the different sections are used for is a good way to finish off talking about the Tar Valon in general.
Well, I like how it meshes almost the future and the past, because again, it was built this way and we don't know if it's still being used exactly the same way, but like now it's still the physical building. And they still have the tower, which has never been destroyed and never been whatever. Right. And so it is still this like kind of iconic reach back and like feel what your ancestors were trying to do with it, that you're still trying to figure out and do the same thing with. So I like that. It kind of marries the past and the present.
So the tower itself, in addition to being the tallest building in Tar Valon, at the time of the book series, it's the tallest structure in the world.
I don't know about that. I think
Richmond
is the tallest structure in the world.
Oh God.
Daniel, you're on fire tonight, bro. You are on fire tonight.
All right. Anyway, so the actual tower, please.
So, of course, it's both home and training facility for Aes Sedai, those that want to become Aes Sedai, and the warders who serve and protect the Aes Sedai.
Indeed.
It's a bone white spire, which makes 90% of the illustrations describing it wrong. But it's a bone white spire, nearly 100 spans, around 600 feet or 183 meters in height. And the roof is flat topped with a waist high railing. A lot of the illustrations show it as either a cylindrical tower or the more rectangular tower that's popular from medieval lore, or medieval times rather. I mean, it really did happen. It's not really like this. And that's not the design. The one that I do like is if you go onto the what.fandom.com and you go to the White Tower one and you scroll all the way to the bottom next to the See Also section, the depiction of the White Tower they have there is far closer to what I imagine the White Tower would look like. And I think it looks a lot better than the stereotypical medieval-esque, castle tower.
Agreed. I like that one as well.
I can live with that.
But testing. So the lowest level of the tower is only used for testing novices to become accepted. And that's where the
making women swear the 3 oaths.
Oh yeah, that's later on. That's not an official,
right?
In the sub basements.
I mean, technically, if you say the lowest level, that could only be referring to the ground.
Oh, level. That's fair.
It could be not including the basements. That of course they keep all the Angreal in and everything that they don't want anybody else to know about.
Yeah.
But of course, it's the lowest level that has the somewhat infamous 3 linked ring Terra Angreal, each large enough to walk through.
Right?
Huh?
The Olympic rings.
Yeah, half of the Olympic rings.
Sure.
So that's what the lowest level is designated for. The bottom half of the White Tower is dedicated to the Hall of the Tower. There's a bunch of common rooms that are decorated in all the colors of the Ajas, but there are also some rooms that are specifically decorated only for the colors of one Aja. And of course, the hall area is what's used for the Ajas to all meet together under the presidents of the Amerlin seat. And of course, they have their independent Aja-specific common rooms to talk amongst their own business, and then common rooms that share all the colors of all the Ajas that they can all use to get together and talk across Aja Isles, which they appear.
Can you sing with all the voices of the mountain?
Oh God!
Can you paint with all the colors of the Ajas?
Oh God, you're fired. Jeez.
Yeah. So those rooms seem like they're getting a decent amount of use at the start of the series, and then Elida gets there, and 90% of them probably stop being used, and then after Elida, they probably finally get to be used again.
They just want to be used.
Yep. The top half of the White Tower is where all the Aja quarters reside. Each Aja, of course, has their own literal pie-shaped section of the tower that they get to call home. And of course, only the fully raised Aes Sedai reside in these sections, because you can't choose an Aja until you are Aes Sedai. And all the decoration styles and colors and everything are related to that distinct Aja's colors and purposes. Most notably, most of the floors are tiled with a colored flame of Tar Valon representing whatever Aja. We do get some descriptions of the green Aja quarters that have sword and weapon carvings on wood and tapestries of battle scenes befitting the battle Aja. The white Aja has a lot of scenes of snow and other white scenery, and they have a lot of silver paneling. And in a bit of hilarity, WhatFandom.com's only description of the brown Aja quarters is how, during the unraveling of the pattern, they went from the 22nd level of the tower and swap place with the novice quarters, which is hilarious because the novice quarters aren't even physically, technically in the tower. And then, of course, the very highest level of the tower is reserved for the offices of the Amerlin Seat and the Keeper of the Chronicles and the Amerlin Seat's bedchambers and all that as well. Novices and accepted are boarded in a palace-like building that is attached to the rear of the main tower. And I know for the majority of me reading it, I always, and probably it was me probably overlooking it again, thought that it was the lower sections of the tower, and I would be wrong. But the interior of the novice and accepted quarters has a bunch of stone-railed galleries surrounding a small courtyard consisting of a small garden with only a handful of evergreen bushes. The 2 accepted galleries can hold almost 200 accepted, while the 2 novice galleries can hold nearly 400, which is indicative.
Of course, there are a bunch of bushes around the White Tower.
Yeah. Well, they're not very big ones. They trim them back so it would look bigger.
Oh boy.
I mean, well, when you're a novice, you have a little bush. When you get to be a full Aes Sedai, you have a bigger bush.
Oh no!
You get access to the bigger bushes.
I don't want to think about novice bushes.
You're
I
right.
prefer to stay out of prison.
That's. Whew. Okay, so thank you for tuning in to the. Oh boy.
Anyway,
but for real though, so there's well, not only that, but don't they talk about the tower being, it's a shining white spire that appears. If you look closely, of course, you can see the different stones, but it appears to be so well made that it appears as if it's one single stone tower.
But remember,
right?
It's not a shining white tower. It's actually a bone white tower. Which is actually kind of like an off-white.
Mm-hmm.
Which is cool. Okay.
Especially us off-white people are like, yeah.
That's right. Off-white people. Oh, boy. So, if you guys have any other thoughts about the White Tower or Tar Valon or anything like that, feel free to jump in with your thoughts. Comment on Twitter. We're big on Twitter. We like to do Twitter. We like to do Twitter things. We've got our Discord channel.
What is our handle on Twitter there, Josh?
On Twitter? Well, it's so wonderful of you to ask. On Twitter, we are at Tower Podcast. TOWERPODCAST.
With a capital P and a capital T.
Tower Podcast.
With a capital T, and that rhymes with P, and that stands for pool.
Stands for pool.
Right here in Tar Valon.
Right here in River City. Right here in Tar Valon. I love it.
Go swimming in the bushes.
But no,
oh God.
I knew you were going to do that.
Oh, you're going to the dungeon.
Oh, dear Lord. Why do we have so much fun?
Any other thoughts about Tar Valon? Anything we missed? Anything you think is significant? Or if you want to continue to have
conversations about bushes, that's also acceptable.
Every time we talk about that, it makes me remember like the commercials for like the women's razors, and they had all the women with the razors standing in front of different sculpted bushes.
Yes.
That's all. Every time you keep talking about that, I just poor novices and accepted just having to manicure their bushes. Younglings and warders walking by.
So you know what's actually really funny about that is that there is currently a company called Manscaped.
Yeah.
That literally is doing like the same commercials.
So I don't have
which is just kind of hilarious in terms of the like how far have we come that now men can talk about.
So the funny thing is I actually
being
have
encouraged
body
by
wash.
pop culture.
I actually have the Manscaped body wash, and what's the other one they have? It's called Crop Preserver.
Oh, I have no
Oh,
idea.
yeah.
I
No,
don't.
I'm telling
I've
you,
seen
that's
a
what
couple
it's
of
called.
commercials, but I have to admit I'm not very
That's what it's
familiar.
called, man.
But I will
I'm
trust
telling
you.
one of those days where you've been outside
I-
working and you don't have time to take a shower and you have to go somewhere just to make sure the boys don't stink.
Oh, you see him? He just went, huh, and then was possessed by a
Been possessed
demon.
by the devil.
And then he was possessed by the devil. Oh boy!
Really good body wash.
Do our skulls
but
look like this
as
now?
always,
Because we've drank so much absinthe.
we've had one absinthe, yes. But what about second absinthe?
I think they had like 6. And they were right with the Lord by the end of it.
Oh, they were on 11Cs. All right.
Yes.
Oh man. But yeah, so comment
So
on
thanks for
Twitter,
everybody for
comment on our
tuning in.
Discord. If you don't have an invite to our Discord, you can get one. We'd love to have you.
Easily,
Also,
you can get.
if
one
you would like
easily.
to talk to us without necessarily talking to the whole community, you can also always send us an email at blacktowerpod@gmail.com.
This is also
Gmail.com.
true.
And if you would like to enjoy the
Love it.
tasty pre-recording stuff that winds up 99.99% of the time, just like Lysol kills germs, we wind up being funny in the pre-recording. And you can find us there
And
at, I believe it's patreon.com
That's true.
/blacktowerpod.
Indeed.
indeed.
And specifically,
Thank you so
just
much.
before we go, we did go ahead and call out some people when we did our Taste the Taint challenge. And if
That
you
is
missed
true.
it, Tigraine and Dane Bornhold both participated in the Taste the Taint challenge based on our challenges.
Nope,
Am I?
you're wrong. Tigraine has. Dane has not.
I would have sworn he did.
It was.
Oh, it was Child Bayar. You're
Child
right.
Bayar.
You're totally right. Dane has not
Child Bayar
yet
did
done
it,
it.
and he rocked it.
How?
Dane,
what the fuck?
where you at?
However, yes,
If you don't do the Taste the Taint challenge, you're a dark
Yes.
friend. Boom.
and yes, props to Child Buyer. I do apologize that I got that mixed up. So props to Tigraine, props to Child Buyer, and
You probably just made Child
Yeah, right.
Bayar's day.
and super solid props to High Lord Wyramon as well, because he was not challenged by us, but he was challenged by Tigraine and therefore also participated. So if you
He
rocked it.
He rocked
It
it.
was
That
so
was
good.
so awesome.
So if anyone else would like to join us for the Taste the Taint challenge, anytime that you want to put together a video, we are happy to see it. I try to comment on all of the ones that I see, and I know that everybody enjoys them. Whether you rock it or you get totally like hard, or if you get rocked like me, you
Hey, at least you didn't rub hot sauce
you
in your
get
fucking
super
eye.
props. I mean, yeah, that's true.
I was walking around like Forrest Whitaker for 30 minutes after that. People kept looking at me like, what's he so suspicious of? What's wrong with him?
Perfect. What's going
Is he
on?
winking or what? Is he
But
having
yeah,
a
so
stroke?
super props to you guys for those of you who already joined us. For anyone else who's interested, we highly recommend the Hot Ones site, which or Heatonist is a great place to go ahead and get your
Oh,
It's
yes.
funny because it's
Your
like
hot sauce
hedonism.
is-
Wonderful.
Tell you what, there's a lot of hate in this dick.
but yeah, there are but yeah, they're super great. We've definitely gotten some hot sauce from them. I know that Josh actually has the subscription box, so definitely recommend that as
I
well.
do indeed.
Heatonist, if you're hearing this, we'd love to be sponsored. If you want to go ahead and send us boxes, we will continue to push the Taste the Taint
Bro, we will
challenge
do weekly
all the
fucking
as well
videos for
as
that shit.
encourage those. Oh, agreed. Totally agreed. But yeah, other than that, have a great night, everybody. Love to hear from you and love doing this for you guys, for us all here at the Black Tower. Jesus fucking Christ, English. For all of us here at the Black Tower, I have been
Words are
Daniel.
hard. I have been tainted.
And I have been Andrew.
And stay away from all the novice bushes. Goodbye.